Ladies and gentlemen, let me take you back. Picture this. The year is 1994. The internet is a wild frontier. Most people think it's a fad, like digital wallpaper that will fade in a few years. Newspapers laugh at it. Wall Street yawns at it. The average person doesn't even have an email address. But one man sees something different. Jeffrey Preston Bezos. At the time, Bezos was not the richest man in the world. He wasn't even rich. He was a Princeton graduate working at a hedge fund in New York, making good money, comfortable, set for life if he wanted. But comfort has killed more dreams than poverty ever has, and Bezos knew it. See, in his own words, he was haunted by what he called a regret minimization framework. Imagine yourself at 80 years old looking back at your life. Which decisions would you regret? Which risks would you wish you had taken? Bezos realized that if he didn't jump into the unknown, into this thing called the internet, he would regret it forever. That single mental framework, regret minimization, was the spark. But sparks are nothing without fuel. And Bezos had the fuel, a brain wired for infinite compounding. Most people think Bezos started Amazon to sell books. Wrong. Bezos never wanted a bookstore. He wanted the everything store. But he was smart enough to know that you don't build Rome in a day. Books were simply the wedge, a massive catalog, standardized, easy to ship, and a perfect training ground to master logistics, data, and scale. This is lesson 1 from Bezos's playbook. Start narrow, scale infinite. He didn't waste time building 10 different businesses at once. He built one beachhead and then expanded relentlessly. Books turned into CDs, CDs turned into electronics, electronics turned into groceries. And before anyone realized it, Amazon wasn't a store. It was the infrastructure of global commerce. This is what I call the Bezos illusion. He convinces the world he's selling one thing, while in reality he's laying down invisible tracks for everything. Most CEOs worship shareholders. They fear Wall Street. They dance to the short-term drum of quarterly earnings. Bezos didn't. From day one, Bezos drilled a single law into Amazon's DNA. Customer obsession beats competitor obsession. Think about how radical that is. Most companies spend their energy looking sideways, copying competitors, fighting small wars. Bezos ignored them. He looked forward into the customer's mind, 5, 10, 20 years ahead. Here's an example. Free shipping. Analysts called it suicide. "You'll lose money," they screamed. And Bezos smiled because he knew something they didn't. Once customers taste convenience, they never go back. Amazon Prime wasn't just a membership. It was a behavioral drug. Once you're hooked on 2-day shipping, on frictionless buying, you never leave. Bezos understood this at a cellular level. If you want infinite wealth, you don't chase money. You build systems that customers cannot live without. Bezos has a saying, "If we have a good idea, we're willing to invest for 10 years without profit." 10 years. Think about that. Most people can't wait 10 weeks. Most businesses can't wait 10 quarters. Bezos was willing to wait a decade. Why? Because he wasn't playing the same game. Here's the Bezos rule. Time is the great arbitrage. While competitors burned themselves out chasing quarterly returns, Bezos stretched time like an elastic band. He planted seeds that looked tiny, unprofitable, even laughable, until one day they erupted into trillion-dollar forests. AWS is the perfect example. Born inside Amazon as a tool to manage their own servers, it quietly evolved into the backbone of the internet. Today, AWS powers Netflix, Zoom, NASA, the CIA. Entire economies run on it, and it throws off tens of billions in pure profit. Did Bezos invent cloud computing? No. But he was the only one patient enough, bold enough, and relentless enough to build it at scale, while everyone else dismissed it as just servers. That is infinite wealth thinking, leveraging time as a weapon. Now let's talk about the secret sauce almost nobody understands. Bezos could have cashed out. He could have taken profits, bought yachts, lived like a king, but he didn't. Every single dollar Amazon made in the early years, he reinvested. Wall Street hated it. Investors begged him to show profits. Bezos didn't care. He poured money back into warehouses, robotics, shipping, servers, AI. Here's the principle. Infinite wealth requires infinite reinvestment. Because compounding doesn't just apply to money, it applies to data, it applies to logistics, it applies to network effects. The flywheel effect, Bezos's famous model, is a loop of reinvestment, lower prices, more customers, more sellers, more selection, more data, lower costs, lower prices again. That loop spins faster and faster until it becomes unstoppable. And when the flywheel hits escape velocity, you don't just own a company, you own the infrastructure of civilization. But here's where the story gets darker, and where the secrets live. Because Bezos didn't build infinite wealth just by vision and patience. He built it with ruthless moves hidden in plain sight. Tax arbitrage. For years, Amazon paid little to no federal tax. How? Through reinvestment, credits, and global structures most people don't understand. While the average worker paid 20–30% in taxes, Amazon reinvested its way into untouchable scale. Labor arbitrage, the warehouses. Millions of workers optimized to the second, tracked by AI, squeezed for efficiency. The media calls it harsh. Bezos calls it leverage. Every second saved was another fraction of compounding added to the flywheel. Monopoly positioning. Amazon doesn't compete, it dominates. By undercutting prices until competitors bleed, then scaling vertically and horizontally, Bezos created a machine that eats industries alive. First books, then retail, then cloud. Tomorrow, healthcare, space, AI. These are not accidents. They are the hidden teeth of the playbook. Now let's go deeper, because Bezos's playbook isn't just economics, it's philosophy. Bezos is obsessed with the concept of day one. He says, day two is stasis, followed by irrelevance, followed by excruciating decline, followed by death, and that is why it is always day one. Think about that. Day one is hunger. Day one is urgency. Day one is infinite growth. By living in day one forever, Bezos engineered a mindset where complacency is impossible. And when complacency is impossible, infinite wealth becomes inevitable. Ladies and gentlemen, this is just the opening act. We've seen the spark, the mental models, the ruthless reinvestment, the hidden shadow moves. But that's only the surface, because in the next block, we'll go even deeper into how Bezos weaponized data, surveillance, and invisible infrastructure to build one of the most powerful empires in human history. What you've seen so far is how Bezos thinks. What you're about to see next is how Bezos controls. Let's shift gears, because now we move from the visible Bezos, the storefront, the smiling packages, the customer obsession, to the invisible Bezos. And make no mistake, the invisible Bezos is far more dangerous. Because while the world was busy laughing at online bookstores, Bezos was building something else entirely. He was laying the plumbing of the 21st century. We live in an economy where data is the currency of power, and Jeff Bezos saw it before almost anyone else. Every search, every click, every purchase, every review. Amazon doesn't just sell you products. Amazon studies you. It profiles you. It learns your desires, your fears, your rhythms of life. When you buy toothpaste on Amazon, it's not just a sale. It's a signal that tells the machine who you are, what you need, what you'll want next. Over time, those signals compound into prediction. Prediction turns into manipulation. Manipulation turns into control. Bezos didn't build a marketplace. He built the largest consumer behavior database in human history. And here's the kicker. While Google knows what you search, and Facebook knows what you like, Amazon knows what you actually buy. And that's the most valuable data of all. This is Bezos's hidden playbook. Control the flow of consumer data, and you control the economy itself. Now, let's talk about the quiet monster, Amazon Web Services. Most people don't even realize it exists. They think of Amazon as boxes, trucks, and Prime. But in truth, AWS is the empire's beating heart. Do you use Netflix? That runs on AWS. Zoom calls during the pandemic? AWS. Streaming, banking, the US government, the CIA, all plugged into AWS. Think about what that means. While Google and Microsoft fight for market share, Bezos built the digital spine of civilization. This is not a retail company. This is infrastructure. And infrastructure is eternal, because once you control the roads, the ports, the servers, once the world runs on your rails, infinite wealth becomes automatic. And AWS was no accident. It was the logical extension of Bezos's infinite reinvestment cycle. Build what Amazon needs, then sell it to the world. He turned Amazon's internal pain, managing servers, into a trillion-dollar gold mine. That is infinite wealth alchemy. But Bezos didn't stop at knowing what you buy. He wanted to know how you live. Enter Alexa, a device so innocent, so friendly. Play me a song, Alexa. Turn on the lights, Alexa. But behind the friendly voice lies a surveillance network. Microphones in millions of homes. Listening, learning, mapping your private life. Most people laughed it off. Who cares? It's just convenient. And that's the trick. Bezos knew that convenience is the ultimate Trojan horse. You'll trade your privacy for comfort. You'll invite the surveillance willingly. And once inside, Bezos's machine doesn't just sell you products. It shapes your environment. It guides your habits. It rewires your home. That's the deeper layer of Bezos's playbook. Turn every customer into a node in the surveillance web. Now let's look at the physical side. Amazon is not a store. Amazon is a logistics empire. Warehouses the size of cities, fleets of planes, trucks, drones, robots sorting packages with military precision. Bezos understood something few people did. In the modern age, logistics is leverage. Whoever controls the flow of goods controls the economy. Think of it. Every small business, every seller, every independent brand that plugs into Amazon's fulfillment network becomes dependent on Amazon. That's not just service. That's control. If Bezos shuts you out, your business dies. This is feudalism 2.0. Amazon is the castle, sellers are the peasants, and Bezos is the lord who owns the roads, the walls, the gates. That's how you build infinite wealth. Not by selling one product, but by making everybody else pay rent on your infrastructure. But what happens when Earth itself is too small? Bezos' obsession with space is not fantasy. It's not playtime with rockets. It's the ultimate extension of his infinite wealth playbook. With Blue Origin, Bezos isn't just competing with Elon Musk. He's building the next layer of infrastructure. Because if commerce moves to space, mining asteroids, solar energy, off-world colonies, the first movers will own trillions in resources. He calls it the long game of civilization, but don't be fooled. It's also the longest bet on infinite wealth humanity has ever seen. When you control not just Earth's infrastructure, but the infrastructure of the solar system, wealth becomes cosmic. But infinite wealth doesn't come without enemies. Bezos's empire has faced constant war, with governments over taxes and monopoly laws, with workers over conditions and wages, with competitors crushed under Amazon's relentless expansion. And yet, Bezos always plays the same card: patience, scale, leverage. Governments move slow. Bezos moves fast. Competitors fight small battles. Bezos builds infinite infrastructure. Workers strike. Bezos builds robots. This is the cold ruthlessness baked into his operating system. If there's resistance, automate around it. Now we reach the core. Because all of this, the data, the servers, the warehouses, the space rockets, is just the surface machinery. The real secret is mindset. Bezos doesn't think like a businessman. He thinks like a civilization architect. He doesn't build for today. He builds for 100 years. He doesn't play finite games. He plays infinite ones. And when you play infinite games, wealth becomes infinite by default. The lesson here is not copy Amazon. You can't. Nobody can. The lesson is, adopt the operating system. Think in decades, not days. Build infrastructure, not gimmicks. Collect data, not likes. And above all, reinvest until the flywheel spins on its own. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the invisible empire, the playbook behind the Smile logo. The reason Jeff Bezos turned from a hedge fund employee into the richest man on Earth. And we're still only scratching the surface. Because in the next block, we'll dive into the personal laws of Bezos, his decision frameworks, his mental algorithms, the ruthless patterns he used to bend reality itself. That's where the real secrets of infinite wealth live. Imagine this. While most billionaires play defense, Bezos has always played offense, not just in business, but in time itself. You see, Jeff Bezos doesn't think in quarters, or even decades. He thinks in centuries. He invested $42 million into building a 10,000-year clock inside a mountain in Texas. A clock that will tick once a year with a century hand designed to last 10 millennia. Why? Because Bezos isn't signaling money. He's signaling immortality of wealth. While the rest of us think about rent, bills, or maybe retirement, Bezos is embedding his legacy into the timeline of civilization itself. And here's the first secret of his playbook. Infinite wealth begins with infinite timelines. Most people overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what can be built in 50. Bezos exploits this psychological flaw. He stretches his vision so far ahead, competitors simply quit trying to keep up. Now, let ES talk about how he turned Amazon from a garage bookshop into a machine that feeds on the global economy itself. The secret wasn't books. It wasn't even e-commerce. It was data gravity. Bezos understood something Wall Street ignored. When you gather millions of customers, track every click, every search, every purchase, you don't just sell products, you sell predictive power. Amazon's true product isn't books, isn't Prime, isn't Alexa. The real product is us, our desires, our behaviors, our digital footprints. That data flows into algorithms so powerful that Amazon can predict what you'll buy before you even know you want it. That's why one of Bezos' boldest internal ideas was anticipatory shipping, sending items to warehouses near you before you even click buy. And here's where the playbook gets dark. Bezos' empire isn't just about satisfying demand. It's about creating demand. By mastering psychology, convenience, and frictionless design, Amazon doesn't just dominate markets. It reshapes human behavior itself. Think about it. The 2-day shipping wasn't just a perk. It was a reprogramming of consumer patience. We now expect instant gratification in everything. Bezos didn't just shorten delivery time, he shortened the human attention span. And the moment you rewire people's brains, you own them. Now let's go deeper into the mechanics of infinite wealth. Bezos uses what I call the flywheel of inevitability. Lower prices bring in more customers. More customers attract more sellers. More sellers expand product selection. More selection improves customer experience. Better experience brings in more customers. This infinite loop doesn't just grow Amazon. It creates a gravitational field so strong that even trillion-dollar competitors struggle to escape it. Walmart? Crushed. Barnes & Noble? Vaporized. Countless startups absorbed or destroyed. But here's the real insight for you. Bezos never saw this flywheel as a business trick. He saw it as a universal principle. He asked, what flywheels exist in space exploration? In cloud computing? In media? That's why he built Blue Origin, Amazon Web Services, and even bought the Washington Post. Each is a flywheel designed to spin forever, powered by data, attention, or infrastructure. And let me drop this bomb. AWS, Amazon Web Services, might be the single most profitable idea of the 21st century. While we think of Amazon as the place we buy groceries or gadgets, the real cash cow is invisible. AWS powers Netflix, Airbnb, NASA, the CIA, and even the Pentagon. Governments, corporations, startups, every digital empire is plugged into Bezos' server farms. Infinite wealth doesn't just come from selling products, it comes from owning the rails of the digital world. And Bezos, he owns the rails. Now picture this. Every email, every bank transaction, every movie you stream, at some point, flows through a machine inside an Amazon data center. The empire isn't online shopping. The empire is digital oxygen, and Bezos holds the oxygen tank. Here's where the playbook turns sinister. While politicians debate taxes and billionaires, Bezos operates in shadows of infrastructure. He doesn't need to fight governments. He makes them dependent. When the CIA signed a $600 million deal with Amazon to host its data, the message was clear. Even the most powerful intelligence agency on Earth needs Bezos' servers. And this brings us to one of the darkest truths of his playbook. Control the infrastructure, and you control the empire. Control the empire, and you control the civilization. But let's not stop there. Let's talk about Blue Origin, his space company. On the surface, it looks like a vanity. Here's the truth no one likes to admit. Jeff Bezos didn't become the richest man alive by being nice. He became the richest man alive by being ruthless in ways most people can't even stomach. Let's strip it down. Bezos has a rule inside Amazon, known as the kill zone. Any startup that dares to operate inside Amazon's territory is either acquired, undercut, or annihilated. Think diapers. Calm. This little company was killing it, disrupting the baby goods market. What did Amazon do? They slashed diaper prices, took massive losses, forced the competitor to sell, then absorbed the carcass. That's not just business. That's war. Bezos runs Amazon like a general in a permanent battlefield. And this is the second secret of infinite wealth. Wealth doesn't flow to the nicest. It flows to the most relentless. You see, while most CEOs want to be loved, Bezos doesn't care about being loved. He cares about being inevitable. When competitors complain about Amazon's tactics, Bezos simply smiles. Because the empire isn't built on approval, it's built on dominance. Now let's talk about how he scales that ruthlessness with psychology. Bezos is obsessed with metrics. Every single movement inside Amazon is tracked, measured, analyzed. Employees aren't evaluated by feelings, they're evaluated by data. Productivity scores, efficiency rates, algorithmic feedback. Workers have said it feels like being managed by a machine, and in many ways, they are. Bezos isn't just running a company, he's running a human algorithm. Why? Because human sympathy slows down decisions. But numbers? Numbers don't cry. Numbers don't ask for mercy. Numbers tell you the truth, even when it's ugly. Bezos uses this machine-like system to squeeze maximum output from minimum cost. That's why warehouses run like militarized zones. Every package you receive in 2 days or less. It was bought with human sweat tracked to the decimal point. And here's the twist. Bezos doesn't hide it. He once said, "Your margin is my opportunity." In other words, if you're making money, Amazon will find a way to take it. This is the predator's mantra. This is financial Darwinism. Infinite wealth doesn't come from being safe. It comes from devouring every inefficiency in the ecosystem until nothing is left. But wait, it gets darker. Because Bezos doesn't just optimize business, he optimizes people's identities. Amazon Prime isn't just a subscription, it's a psychological anchor. You pay once, and suddenly every purchase feels free. You don't even think twice about buying toothpaste, socks, electronics, because here's the question nobody dares to ask. What does a man who has everything left to conquer? Jeff Bezos isn't chasing yachts anymore. He isn't buying toys to impress anyone. He's chasing something far bigger. He's chasing time itself. Let's begin with a secret project few people understand. Bezos has poured hundreds of millions into longevity science, Altos Labs, the cutting-edge biotech company trying to crack cellular reprogramming, the code to reverse aging. That's not charity. That's not curiosity. That's Bezos looking death in the face and saying, "Not yet." Why does this matter? Because once you have more money than you can spend, mortality becomes your final enemy. Every extra year of life means another decade of compounding wealth, another round of empire building, another universe of power. Bezos isn't just trying to live longer, he's trying to buy himself infinite runway. Think about it. The average person spends their life working for money. Bezos wants to live forever so money can work for him. That's the ultimate inversion of the human condition. And it doesn't stop with biology. Let's talk about AI. Behind the glossy stories of Alexa and Echo lies a deeper truth. Bezos sees AI as a governance system. Algorithms already run Amazon's warehouses, logistics, recommendation engines. But Bezos's endgame is far bigger. He's training AI to become the operating system of civilization. Imagine a world where consumption, logistics, media, healthcare, even governance are optimized by a single AI-powered grid. That's not science fiction. That's the AWS brain, quietly growing in the background. AWS isn't just servers. It's the spine of the digital world. Netflix runs on it. The CIA runs on it. Your favorite apps run on it. What happens when the infrastructure itself starts to think? When AI isn't just answering questions, but making decisions? That's Bezos's long play, to hardwire intelligence into the very backbone of civilization. And when that switch flips, who owns the God machine? Bezos. Now let's pull the camera wider. Space. Blue Origin. People laughed when Bezos poured billions into rockets. But here's the truth. Earth is small. Earth has limits. And billionaires hate limits. Bezos calls his vision the Great Expansion. He wants to move industries off Earth, build giant orbital colonies, and turn our planet into a nature reserve. That's not a hobby. That's civilizational real estate speculation. While you're worrying about rent, Bezos is buying the cosmos. And here's the twisted beauty. If he succeeds, he doesn't just own land. He owns gravity itself. Whoever controls off-world industry controls energy, minerals, satellite grids, even planetary defense. That's the kind of power no empire in history has ever dreamed of. Kings fought over borders. Bezos is fighting over the solar system. So let's connect the dots. Longevity science buys him time. AI builds him governance. Blue Origin expands his territory. AWS locks down digital civilization. Altogether, it's not a company. It's not even an empire. It's a parallel operating system for humanity. And that's the fourth secret of infinite wealth. Don't just build wealth. Build the future framework that everyone else must live inside. See, money is fragile. Empires fall. Currencies crash. But frameworks? They endure. Bezos doesn't want to play in someone else's world. He wants to architect the world itself. Now let's cut deeper into his psychology. Jeff Bezos isn't Elon Musk, tweeting chaos and chasing attention. He's quiet, calculated, cold. And that's exactly why he's dangerous. Because while Musk is playing chess in public, Bezos is building a board so big, most people don't even see the game. His silence is his weapon. By the time you realize what he's doing, you're already inside the cage. And here's the ultimate red pill. Bezos doesn't see himself as human anymore. He sees himself as a node, a consciousness plugged into capital, AI, biology, and space. The man is building his own immortality in code, flesh, and orbit. That's the blueprint for infinite wealth, to transcend wealth itself, to fuse human ambition with machine logic, to outlive nations, and to outlast. Listen, this is where the story stops being a business case study and starts being a political thriller. Money can buy companies. Money can buy servers. But there's one thing money wants most of all: permission. Permission to operate, permission to scale, permission to run without being shut down. Jeff Bezos didn't just build businesses that people liked. He built businesses that governments everywhere must depend on. And when a nation depends on you, you stop being a mere corporation. You become a geopolitical actor. Today, I will show you how Bezos quietly engineered levers of state influence. Not with tanks or treaties, but with contracts, logistics, data, and the soft power of indispensability. This is the part of the playbook that's invisible unless you know where to look, so watch closely. Why states need Bezos. Imagine a cold morning in a government command center. A natural disaster hits, supply chains collapse, communications lag, and emergency services need capacity. Fast. Who does the state call for cloud power, logistics, or rapid procurement? Not a startup. Not a small vendor. The government calls the firm that already has the rails in place. That's Amazon. When critical systems run on your servers, when your fulfillment centers can distribute emergency supplies overnight, when your delivery fleet can be redirected to support crisis logistics, you are not simply a vendor. You're infrastructure. And once governments build missions around your infrastructure, they build dependency. That dependency is where the leverage lives. States will tolerate discomfort, regulatory headaches, even public outrage, in exchange for the stability of services they cannot easily replace. The procurement game. Contracts as levers. Bezos' empire plays the procurement game like a grandmaster. Governments buy at scale. Governments require reliability, security, and continuity. They also move slowly, hate risk, and prize predictable vendors. That's Amazon's sweet spot. Contracts do more than provide revenue. They create barriers to exit. Once a national health service, intelligence agency, or defense department integrates dozens of missions into a cloud provider, ripping that out becomes a multi-year project, costing political capital and operational risk. That lock-in creates bargaining power. When Amazon wins a major government contract, it's not just a win for AWS revenue. It is a geopolitical victory. The state has aligned part of its critical infrastructure with Bezos' firm. That alignment creates reciprocal influence. Governments may shape procurement to favor continuity. They may tolerate practices they would otherwise punish. The vendor becomes a stakeholder in national resilience. The quiet exchange, access for stability. There is a recurring exchange between states and private platforms, access for stability. Governments need data centers, cloud services, secure messaging, identity platforms, and logistics. Firms need clear rules, favorable tax treatment, and predictable regulation. So a bargain forms. The state grants access, permits growth, and sometimes offers financial incentives. And in return, the firm supplies infrastructure, jobs, and capabilities. This bargain is not always nefarious. Sometimes it's wise, but it creates subtle asymmetry. When push comes to shove, a government that depends on your infrastructure is unlikely to impose crippling measures that would jeopardize national operations. That's power by design. It's quiet. It's durable. It's the kind of power a sovereign cannot always check without harming itself. I've told you about data as Bezos' most valuable asset. But data does something else. It gives you foresight, and foresight shapes policy. When a cloud provider hosts the apps of thousands of retailers, transport operators, hospitals, and media outlets, they see macro trends in real time. Supply chain slowdowns, emerging demand spikes, regional outages. That visibility is gold to a state. It means you can warn, advise, or intervene before a crisis escalates. Now imagine the government asks for insights. They rarely get raw data, but they do get aggregated analysis, capacity forecasts, and risk assessments. If the government begins to rely on these briefings to make decisions, the company providing them gains influence over policy formation. Influence over policy looks like subtle nudges, framing an energy crisis as structural rather than temporary, prioritizing certain regulatory responses, advising on procurement that benefits private architectures. None of those steps require bribery or backdoor deals. They require trusted information flow, and trusted information flows to the party who controls the censors. Media power. Narrative, not just news. Bezos owns a major newspaper. That's part of the playbook, too. Control of a prominent media outlet is not about printing ads. It's about narrative framing. A paper that enjoys access to policymakers, tech leaders, or internal memos will often set the tone for public debate. When policy debates arise over taxes, antitrust, or data privacy, media frames decide which parts of the issue gain oxygen. Friendly frames can soften regulatory push. Tough frames can rally public pressure. Who gets to choose the angle? Whoever owns the megaphone. Real influence is often about setting the terms of the conversation so that eventual policy outcomes favor long-term continuity for the infrastructure provider. Revolving doors, hiring the state, placing alumni. Another quiet lever of influence is human capital. Large firms cultivate relationships with government by hiring former officials and placing alumni into advisory roles. Those people bring networks, understanding of procurement, and credibility to the firm. They also carry knowledge of how to navigate regulators. Conversely, officials who later take private sector roles often remain sympathetic to the firms that gave them career opportunities. These personnel flows create a culture of mutual familiarity. It's not necessarily corrupt. In many cases, it's simply the reality of expertise transfer. But expertise transfer builds institutional alignment, and alignment reduces friction. The more you normalize personnel exchange between state and firm, the more resembling the firm becomes of a quasi-state actor. Antitrust, regulation, and the art of deflection. Bezos's response to regulatory heat is instructive. When antitrust probes or tax scrutiny arise, the company doesn't disappear. It plays a long game. Comply where necessary. Meet the letter of law to avoid immediate penalties. Invest in relationships. Engage think tanks, policy experts, and public relations to shape the debate. Move fast elsewhere. Expand into jurisdictions or verticals while the conversation is ongoing. Emphasize public benefits, jobs, infrastructure, cloud safe havens, and national resilience. The aim is to outlast the pressure. Regulation often moves slowly. Public indignation moves fast and fades. If you can weather the heat and maintain operational indispensability, the immediate threat often subsides. That is how a private giant bends laws without breaking them. It's not illegal. It's strategic. There's another dimension few consider: logistics and sovereignty. When a private firm controls last-mile delivery across cities, it holds a form of municipal leverage. In emergencies, municipal authorities depend on those delivery networks for distribution. That dependence creates a relationship that can be turned into influence. Preferential permits, access to strategic corridors, or public-private partnerships. On a national level, when a company runs a fleet that augments postal delivery or contracts to move vaccines and supplies, it becomes part of the resilience fabric. Governments then have incentives to maintain smooth relations, incentives that shift the balance of policy choices. Again, power without theatrics, power through being useful at scale, privacy, surveillance, and the limits of power. Let's be blunt about a danger here. The deeper your infrastructure, the more you know. The more you know, the more you can be asked to share. Governments, for reasons of security or public health, will request access to datasets or tracing tools. Sometimes those requests are legitimate. Sometimes they edge toward control. Companies face a choice: resist and risk penalties, or compliance and risk becoming an arm of the state. Many choose a middle path: give aggregated insights, preserve optics, and quietly negotiate the legal framework for future cooperation. That negotiation is the new theater of geopolitics. Companies that can provide privacy-preserving analytics while reassuring governments win both markets and influence. Bezos's firm, with its security teams and contracts, is built to play that role. But the danger is systemic. When private platforms become extensions of state surveillance architecture, citizens' freedoms can erode incrementally. It's subtle, It's legalistic. It's hard to reverse. The diplomacy of infrastructure. Bezos on the world stage. Big tech isn't only domestic. Infrastructure is global. AWS regions are set up around the world. Fulfillment centers serve multiple jurisdictions. Imagine this. You've just spent about 40 minutes walking through Bezos's rise, his empire, his shadow strategies, his control mechanisms. But here's the question burning in your audience's mind. What does this mean for me? What are the rules hidden inside Bezos' empire that I can use in my own life without becoming a corporate overlord? This is where we deliver the crescendo. The rules, the mental models, the blueprint hidden in plain sight. Rule 1. Play the infinite game, not the finite one. Most people play finite games, paycheck to paycheck, month to month, quarter to quarter. Bezos? He plays the infinite game. When asked in interviews what he thinks about quarterly earnings, Bezos shrugged. We're building something for 10 years from now. If Wall Street doesn't like that, too bad. Think about how radical this is. While everyone else is fighting in the mud for pennies, he's laying highways for trucks that won't even drive until a decade later. Lesson for you. Every time you make a move, ask yourself, am I playing the finite game or the infinite game? Rule 2. Obsess over the customer, but redefine who the customer really is. Bezos preaches customer obsession, but look deeper. Who is the real customer? For Amazon Prime, it wasn't you. It was your behavior. Bezos didn't want your subscription money. He wanted to change how you lived. Once Prime locked you into free shipping, your default shopping behavior shifted forever. That's not customer service. That's behavioral architecture. Lesson for you. When you think about business, don't just ask, what product am I selling? Ask, whose behavior am I rewiring, and how do I lock it into my system? Rule 3. Leverage hidden subsidies. Bezos didn't get rich just by selling books or gadgets. He exploited hidden subsidies everywhere. Tax loopholes, state incentives, postal system discounts, cloud computing credits. Most people ignore these invisible rivers of capital because they think they're too small or too bureaucratic. Bezos built an empire by channeling them like a master hydrologist. Lesson for you. Your empire doesn't have to be self-funded. Learn to map the rivers of hidden subsidies, from tax breaks to grants to overlooked financial edges. Rule 4. Build platforms, not products. Every product dies, but platforms? They become ecosystems. Kindle wasn't a book. Rule 5. Weaponize data as currency. Bezos knew early, data is not a byproduct. It's the real currency. Amazon doesn't just sell you toothpaste. It watches when, how often, what brand, and even predicts when you'll run out. That data becomes predictive power. Lesson for you. Even if you're small, start treating data as treasure. The one who sees the patterns first wins the game. Rule 6. Expand horizontally, not vertically. Most businesses expand vertically, making their product better, faster, cheaper. Bezos expanded horizontally, from books to clothes, from groceries to movies, from rockets to cloud infrastructure. This wasn't random, it was strategic. The more fronts he opened, the harder it became for anyone to compete. Lesson for you. Diversify strategically. Don't just polish one weapon, build an arsenal. Rule 7. Control infrastructure, not just interfaces. While Silicon Valley glorified the app layer, Bezos went deeper. He wanted to own the rails of the digital economy, logistics, warehouses, fulfillment centers, AWS cloud servers. When you own the infrastructure, every competitor who tries to rise must pay you a toll. Lesson for you. Ask yourself, what infrastructure do I control? Even on a small scale, it could be distribution, an audience, or a unique data channel. Rule 8. Neutral face, ruthless moves. One of Bezos' greatest assets is his calm, almost nerdy demeanor. He's not a fiery Musk. He's not a flashy Gates. He looks harmless. But behind